Welcome to The Thriving Mama, the podcast that teaches you not just how to survive, but thrive in motherhood. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Davis. Today, we're going to be diving into the third part of the series that we've been exploring the last 2 weeks, our labels, diagnoses, and excuses preventing you from healing. In the first episode, we talked more about using pain as fuel for transformation and the fact that there are a lot of labels and excuses being used to justify where we are at as a society, I should say. And, no amount of, deflection, denying, or ghosting people is going to change your life. We need to take responsibility. That's what the crux of what we got into in episode 37. In episode 38, we dove into how this is affecting not only us, but also our children. And so, we talked about ideas of what messages are sent to our kids when we don't take responsibility for our lives as parents, how taking responsibility makes us stronger and more resilient. And I also gave 6 ways we can start taking responsibility and accountability for our lives and our health. So in this episode, we are going to be talking a little bit more about, what are you holding on to that you need to let go of? If you were triggered in the past 2 episodes, what does that trigger mean? That trigger means you're not taking accountability or responsibility for something in your life. And so we are going to dive into the kind of typical family dynamics or frameworks that I see when this is happening either for a mom or parents together and, their kids, whether I'm working with the parents themselves or the family as a whole. We're also going to be talking more about identity and the importance of identity and why, even though we know what we need to do, we don't do it. And then we're going to talk about another piece of the puzzle in, actually taking the steps to become the person we deserve to be and you deserve to be. If you're confused about where to start addressing your own health, or you've tried all of the things and nothing's worked, I offer podcast listeners a free global health check where I'll evaluate your physical, mental, and emotional health and provide you useful resources on your journey. You will find that link in the show notes. So, as I mentioned earlier, we've been on this journey talking about how, we are starting to be kind of put in boxes with all of these labels and how that is limiting our ability to heal and progress in life. It really is such an impediment. And it really comes from a reductionistic view of the world, which is something that's very prevalent now. It's like we're always trying to reduce things to their lowest common denominator. We're always trying to find, that one thing. How about if we, reverse it and expand? Maybe we should be looking for all of the things or a more expansive view of the world and healing. That's essentially what we're doing when we are addressing, body, mind, and spirit. And this, I think, is really, really important because right now we're seeing, and I ask people to ask themselves this all the time, why are we seeing epidemic levels of anxiety, depression, and mood disorders? We've been reactive and we haven't done anything. It's time over time. We know we've got issues. We're trying to label those issues, but we're not doing anything about those issues. So it's time for us to be proactive and take control and responsibility for ourselves and our actions. I mean, essentially, this is the legacy I want to leave on this earth, but especially with my children. I want them to know that they have the capacity and the resilience to do anything in life. But it starts with responsibility, accountability, and action, and owning your stuff. not just trying to pass it off as a label. So often in my practice, I hear people say, well, I can't do this or I can't do that because I've got X, Y, or Z. That in and of itself is telling me so much about where that person is on their healing journey, that they are subscribing to labels, and that's where their identity is. And that's what we need to change, because a lot of times those very people know that they need to change their diet and they need to get outside and move their bodies and they need to be exposed to the sunlight, on a daily basis. They know all the little things that they need to do, but they're not doing that. And the question is, why? Why are you not doing that? And so that's where I get back to the, were you triggered by any of the previous conversations when I said, you're either subscribing to those labels, or that's where your identity is at, or some of the examples that I gave. Because if you are triggered, you need to think about it in this framework. What are you not taking responsibility or accountability for? What are you holding on to that you need to let go of? Another piece of that is, what excuses are you making that are tied to that? And I know I've mentioned this before, but I've been there too. I worked out so much of my life, then I had kids, and then I wasn't feeling well, and I stopped. And my excuses, my son called me out on it. He's like, Mommy, why do you always start things, start exercise or workout programs and then stop? And I said, I had no good answer. And then I realized I was making all these excuses. It was, I didn't have time. I was busy with my kids and my practice and all of the other things of life. And then, I didn't have the energy to do it. All of the things. But really, those were excuses and they were holding me back. And I, at that point, was a little bit earlier on in some of my really deep self-work. And once I started doing that and my identity started shifting, I was like, hey, I deserve this. And it's a vital part of my life, not only my health, but, who I am, that I had been suppressing for a really long time. So I'm saying all of this in context to help you. I'm not calling you out, because there is no blame here. It's just bringing awareness to the things that we do. Earlier, I had mentioned that, the moms and the families that I work with typically fall into two camps. And it's interesting when we talk about, why the mom isn't making progress or the kids aren't making progress. And they, after we've had this discussion about, the subconscious mind and changing our identity and changing our beliefs and our mindset, because that's the work that needs to be done in order to move forward, they're all like, yeah, I get it. And I'm going to do it. And I take action. And I would say half of them do. And then I get the other ones who don't. They continue to look for excuses and why they can't do it or won't do it. It's really fascinating, because so many of them, when we're talking, they're like, oh, I totally get it. And then they go back and they'll sit with it for about, 24 to 48 hours. And I inevitably get a message in the patient portal that says, oh, but what about this? We tried this. What about this one supplement or this thing I heard on the podcast? No. I know that none of that is going to work. What we need to do is work on your identity, especially as the mom. When we're working with kids, it's working on your identity and working on your trauma and your emotions so that you can be the example for your family, set the tone for your family, meet your kids where they are at and not have a reactivity to them, but hold the space for them so that you're not screaming your head off or freaking out or being snappy or irritable, all of the many dysregulated ways we might respond to our kids. And so that's why I always tell moms, like I've had moms say, hey, can you work with my kid? And yes, I will do that depending upon the context, but more often, a lot of times it's the mom, unless she's done a lot of inner work, needing to do the work herself so that she can self-regulate and change her identity so that she can help facilitate that change for her kids too. And like I said, it's okay. It's okay if you're in that second camp that I just described. and you're still looking for all of the little things. Maybe you're just not ready for that stage of your journey, and that's totally okay. Because I mean, I've been working on this, it seems like lifelong, but with a concerted effort because I want to have that vitality. I want to have vitality. I want to be thriving in life. I don't want to just be asymptomatic. I don't want to be worrying about little things. And that's kind of what the way I like in doing just functional medicine and inner work as well, like doing the inner work, healing the traumas, fixing, healing the emotional stuff, and then changing your identity. That's what brings the vibrant health. We've all had this journey. This is why I do the work I do, because like I said, I didn't want to settle. I kept seeing that I was making progress in my life when I started off just doing the functional medicine. But like I said, it wasn't vibrant and thriving. I felt a little better, but I am always on the search for answers and results for myself and my patients, which is why I keep on digging and adding tools, because I want this for them as well. And the crux of what we're doing is changing identity. I have been trying to figure out why so many of the women I work with will go out and spend tons of money on Stanleys or like whatever clothes are trending, or like things like Lululemon, and getting their nails done. They will purchase, everything under the sun from podcasts or influencers, but they won't spend the money on themselves for health. And I'm like, why? Why is that? And after a really long time, I realized a couple of things, because their identities first are stuck in the place where they're trying to kind of match what is like out there. Because, in chemistry and in science, we say like attracts like. So if that's what you're resonating with, that's what you're going to go after, right? And you want to feel a sense of belonging. Also, there's that component as well. But the biggest thing is you're looking to fill a void. Like that piece of the puzzle is huge. And I think we've all have heard the analogy, money doesn't buy happiness. That's exactly what this is speaking to. Buying all of these things and making yourself look a certain way is not going to fix the problem. It literally is doing the inner work to change the identity. And you have to resolve any of the traumas and emotional stuff and anxiety, whatever the diagnoses that you have been given, that I would say you can walk with that and have it with you. But I wouldn't say I have anxiety, I have depression. I would say anxiety is something I'm experiencing in this moment, or depression is something I'm experiencing in this moment, because then you're not sending that idea to your subconscious. You're not saying, this is me. You're saying, this is something I have right now, and I am going to handle it. So when you do the inner work and you resolve the trauma and the emotions, you really can become fully who you want to be and deserve to be. And that's the crux of the work that we're doing. So I know for those of you who've listened to the podcast for a while, we talk so much about this. We talk about, in the work, identifying where the traumas are stored in your body, going after them, and the various different techniques that we use, and then changing your identity little by little, piece by piece. For some people, it happens pretty quickly. And then other people, I will say myself included, it's been a journey. I've been doing particularly my primary modality, HMT. I have been a student of it, a recipient of it, and also obviously a practitioner for the last 4 or so years. And I've come a long way. My identity has finally changed. I think in the first episode, I mentioned not being triggered by this election at all. Like I just did not care, because I knew that I hold the power within me to show up still in the world as I am authentically. And then I can, help people. I can share that with people, and that can be my influence in the world. And so what was happening with the election did not bother me, but 4 years ago, it really, really did. I was very emotionally invested in it. And so it's a trajectory and it's a journey. So I always tell people that not to beat yourself up over it. And also, I would also say, as you go through the work of changing your identity, that like you step into different versions of yourself, higher versions of yourself. And it's, again, like I always say, it's not a destination. This is a journey. And, you might go a long time and you might feel great. And then all of a sudden something little triggers you and you're like, why did that trigger me? And then you have a little bit more work to do. That's what I find happens to me now. I don't get super duper crazy triggered by anything, but something might trigger me a little bit. And so I end up doing some work surrounding that. The biggest question I ask is why though? Why is this triggering me? And why, how is it not matching the identity that I have right now? So that's the biggest thing. I know in the previous episode number 38, I talked about how you can start taking responsibility. And we mentioned identifying triggers, not subscribing to the labels, communicating, appropriately your feelings and your needs, and taking, accountability for your choices and your actions and moving towards the pain, because that's where we heal. Going towards comfort doesn't help. Going towards comfort does not help you heal. Going towards pain does. And so, there's a lot of different identity exercises out there, but I want to leave you with this one. There's one that you can do, and it's called the mirror exercise. And it's, literally sitting in front of a mirror, and I have patients make sure that they're doing this very intentionally, but it's looking in the mirror and saying certain things that would be considered in the realm of affirmations. Like, I deserve love. I love myself. I love my body. I feel safe in the world, things of that nature, saying that stuff. And if any of it causes a feeling, a twinge or a pain in your body, that means it's something that needs to be worked on. And it's a part of that's part of your current identity. Or you could even say a statement like, I am Hashimoto's, or I have Hashimoto's. That's an autoimmune condition that a lot of my patients have had. And so that type of stuff, if you're saying it and it's pinging inside you, that's literally that diagnostic label is part of your identity. And that's something that needs to shift in order for you to fully heal and move forward. I can say for myself, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's in the past, and I haven't had antibodies in 7 or 8 years, and I had them for a while. So it very much is possible to cause these identity shifts. And they're something that I'm going to be getting into in future episodes is the identity that's associated with chronic disease, and especially autoimmunity, because that's a big piece of the puzzle. I'm going to have special guests on for that. But I encourage you to do the work, do that mirror exercise, do the exercises that I mentioned in episode 38, because our only limitations are ourselves. Once you can move beyond that, your opportunities for life and healing and just being vibrant are limitless. We really are limitless as human beings. And that's something that should be celebrated and explored. And I encourage you to step into that journey if you haven't thought about it yet. If you made it this far, I truly appreciate you. Remember, knowledge is just the beginning. Taking action is what truly sparks change. If you're overwhelmed and don't have enough energy to make it through the day, I invite you to book a free 20-minute coaching call with me. It's a no-obligation chat where we can discuss your health goals and how I might be able to help you achieve them. Visit the link in the episode description to book that call. Until next time, keep striving for wellness, and remember, you have the power to not just survive, but thrive in motherhood.